The Oakwood Plaza Mall buzzed with its usual Saturday energy. Families roamed the wide corridors, parents juggling shopping bags as kids begged for ice cream or tugged toward the toy store. Near the food court, groups of teenagers laughed over trays stacked with greasy fries and soft drinks. The air was a mix of cinnamon rolls and buttery pretzels, a comforting aroma that seemed to define weekend afternoons. Everything felt routine, until it wasn't. The automatic doors by the food court slid open, and a man stepped in. At first, he blended into the crowd like any other well-dressed shopper. His black blazer, plain shirt, dark jeans, and polished shoes were understated but neat. Yet, two details quickly set him apart. One was the pair of dark sunglasses shielding his face. The other, far more striking, was the bright red MAGA hat perched on his head, bold and unmistakable in the bustling mall. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. "Is that Elon Musk?" someone murmured, their voice tinged with disbelief. A woman near the pretzel stand froze mid-bite, squinting at him before nudging her friend. "That's him. I swear it is," she said, already pulling out her phone to snap a picture. The murmurs spread like wildfire. Shoppers slowed their pace, stealing glances or outright gawking. Some stopped in their tracks, pretending to fiddle with their phones while trying to get a better look. The food court buzzed with curiosity as the question rippled through the crowd. Could it really be Elon Musk? The food court's usual chatter gave way to excitement. Phones went up as people tried to take photos. The man casually walked through the mall, stopping briefly at a kiosk to examine drones, his sunglasses hiding any expression, whether it was truly Elon Musk or not. The mystery had turned a regular Saturday into something extraordinary. In the central office of the mall, John Whitaker, the manager, was wrapping up a routine meeting with his staff. Known for his no-nonsense approach and commitment to maintaining the mall's family-friendly image, John was always focused on upholding the rules. One such rule, particularly important in a public space like this, was the prohibition of political displays. It was a simple policy, designed to ensure that all visitors, regardless of background or beliefs, felt welcome in the mall's neutral environment. As John finished outlining the day's operational goals, a knock on the door interrupted the meeting. Nancy, one of the mall's security supervisors, entered with an unusual sense of urgency. Her calm demeanor, usually a hallmark of her role, had been replaced by a noticeable tension. "John, you might want to come out here," she said, her voice more animated than usual. "We've got a bit of a situation." John raised an eyebrow. "What kind of situation?" Nancy hesitated, glancing around as though weighing the right moment to drop the bombshell. "Well, Elon Musk is here," she said, her words hanging in the air. John blinked, momentarily stunned. "You're joking." "I wish I was," Nancy replied, shaking her head. "He's wearing a MAGA hat too." John let out a sigh, already anticipating the headache that would come with handling this. "All right," he said, grabbing his radio. "Let's deal with this quickly." By the time John reached the main floor of the mall, the situation had already escalated. The crowd around the bookstore had swelled, drawing people from all corners of the shopping center. Shoppers who had previously been browsing or waiting in line for food had stopped in their tracks, intrigued by the spectacle unfolding before them. The bookstore, typically a quiet and unassuming part of the mall, had transformed into a gathering point for curious onlookers. Conversations buzzed in hushed tones, punctuated by the occasional snap of a phone camera. The man at the center of it all stood near a shelf labeled Technology and Innovation, casually thumbing through a book titled The Future We Build. The irony of the title wasn't lost on John as he approached. Given the situation at hand, it felt almost poetic, especially considering the growing crowd, the murmurs of speculation, and the camera flashes that seemed to follow every move the man made. John adjusted his stance, taking in the scene as he walked closer. The man in question, dressed in a black blazer over a plain shirt with dark jeans and polished shoes, looked very much like any other customer at first glance. But it was the bold red MAGA hat perched on his head and the reflective sunglasses that made him stand out. The crowd's murmurs grew louder as John approached, each whisper laced with curiosity and anticipation. Was this really Elon Musk? Or was it someone who simply looked strikingly similar? As John stopped a few feet away from the man, he couldn't help but notice the calm, collected demeanor of the individual in question. The man appeared completely unfazed by the attention, his posture relaxed and confident, as if he were accustomed to being in the spotlight. John cleared his throat, cutting through the whispers of the crowd, and addressed the man directly. "Excuse me, sir," John said, his voice steady and professional. "Can I have a word with you?" The man turned slowly, lowering his sunglasses to reveal a face that was unmistakably familiar. If not exactly Elon Musk, it was certainly someone who bore a striking resemblance. His tone was calm yet commanding as he addressed John. "Yes," he replied, as if he were responding to a colleague in a boardroom meeting rather than a mall manager. John blinked for a moment, the similarity to Musk almost throwing him off, but he quickly regained his focus. "I'm going to have to ask you to remove the hat or leave the premises. We have a strict policy about maintaining a neutral environment here." The man raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. He tilted his head slightly, as if to challenge John's request. "A neutral environment?" he repeated, the skepticism in his voice palpable. "Interesting policy." "Yes, sir," John affirmed, his voice firm. "Political attire can be polarizing, and we aim to keep this mall a space where everyone feels comfortable. We ask that you respect that." The man's lips curled into a faint smile, one that seemed neither entirely dismissive nor friendly, but somewhere in between. "I see," he said, his tone still calm but increasingly pointed. "But I'm afraid I have no intention of complying." The crowd, which had continued to grow, responded with a wave of murmurs. Some shoppers exchanged knowing glances. Others stole quick glances at their phones, trying to capture the scene. John could feel the weight of their collective gaze on him, each person eager to witness what would happen next. As the pressure mounted, John steadied his breath and spoke again, his tone now tinged with a hint of frustration. "Sir, I'm asking you politely," John said, though the strain in his voice was becoming apparent. "If you refuse to comply, I'll have to involve security." The man remained unfazed, crossing his arms casually over his chest. The bright red MAGA had a stark contrast against the backdrop of the polished mall. "Do what you have to do," he replied evenly, his calm demeanor almost mocking in its defiance. John's hand hovered over his radio, his fingers brushing against the device as he contemplated his next move. He didn't want to escalate the situation unnecessarily, but the man's refusal left him little choice. With a deep breath, he pressed the button on the radio and spoke in a clipped voice. "I need additional security at the bookstore." The radio crackled in response, confirming the request. John glanced briefly at the crowd, sensing their judgment as every action and word he spoke was being scrutinized. He could feel the weight of their expectations, the pressure of keeping things under control. The arrival of two security guards only added to the spectacle. One, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Eric, stood beside John with his arms crossed. His imposing presence meant to send a clear message. The other, a younger guard named Mia, looked less confident, her eyes darting nervously between John and the man in the red hat. Despite the added security, the man remained completely composed. He didn't fidget, didn't seem nervous. He simply stood there, waiting. His expression was unreadable, though there was a faint hint of amusement at the corners of his mouth, as though he found the entire situation mildly entertaining. "Sir," John said again, his voice now firmer, "this is your final warning. Remove the hat, or you'll have to leave." The man looked at Eric and Mia, then back at John. "And if I don't?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. Eric stepped forward slightly, his tone firm and unwavering. "Then we'll have to escort you out." The man raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a faint smile. "Escort me out? For wearing a hat?" he said, as though the very idea of being removed from a mall for such a reason was absurd. "Do you hear yourselves?" The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, with voices rising above the general noise. "This is ridiculous. Let him wear the hat," shouted a middle-aged man in a denim jacket near the front. "Yeah, he's not hurting anyone," added a young woman holding her phone high to record the moment. But not everyone was on the man's side. "This is private property," someone called out from the back. "They can enforce their rules." "It's not about the hat," another person chimed in. "It's about keeping politics out of public spaces." The man appeared unfazed by the growing debate. Instead, he took a deliberate step closer to John, his presence calm but commanding. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, just loud enough for John to hear. "Tell me something, Mr. Manager," the man said, his tone smooth and pointed. "Is this really about the hat, or is it about who you think I am?" The question hung in the air, cutting through the noise of the crowd. John hesitated, momentarily caught off guard. The eyes of the entire mall were trained on him, their phones raised, documenting every word and action. He swallowed hard and chose his response carefully. "It's about the policy," John said, his voice steady despite the tension. We don't allow any political displays in this mall. It's not personal. The man's faint smile returned. Not personal, he repeated, his tone laced with subtle skepticism. You're enforcing a rule selectively in a place filled with displays of opinions. T-shirts, bumper stickers, even the books in this store. But a hat? That's where you draw the line. The man's voice was soft, as though speaking to himself. He slowly removed his sunglasses, revealing striking blue eyes that seemed strangely familiar. The crowd collectively gasped, the realization dawning. "Oh my God," someone whispered, trying to make sense of it. A teenage girl screamed from the front, cutting through the murmurs. "It's him. It's Elon Musk." The man didn't confirm or deny it, simply standing still with a faint smile at the corners of his lips. Enjoying the attention, John's heart raced. Sweat prickled at the back of his neck. This was no longer just about mall policy, it was about handling a media storm that had erupted unexpectedly. He had to act quickly. This was beyond his job description. "I'm asking you again," John said, his voice wavering slightly. "Will you remove the hat or leave?" The man's smile faded, and he tilted his head, weighing his options. "No," he said calmly but defiantly. Eric, the larger security guard, stepped forward, reaching for the man's arm. But the man stepped back, unyielding. His voice rose enough for the crowd to hear. "You're going to forcibly remove me? Let the world see it," he challenged. The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Others gasped, phones capturing every moment. Some shouted at the guards to back off, while others defended the mall's policy. Mia, the younger guard, looked nervously at John. "What do we do now?" she whispered. John hesitated, his mind racing. No matter what he did, someone would be upset, and this incident would be all over social media. Before he could respond, the man raised a hand, signaling for silence. The crowd went quiet. The man didn't speak immediately, letting the moment linger. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be," he said, his voice calm yet firm. "But before you make your decision, maybe you should hear why I'm here." Curiosity rippled through the crowd. Even John, despite his frustration, found himself drawn in. "All right," John said after a pause. "Let's hear it. But if this is a stunt, you'll understand soon enough," the man interrupted smoothly, his confidence captivating. He clasped his hands and took a step forward, scanning the crowd. "You think this is about a hat," he began, making eye contact with a few people. "But it's not. It never is." The crowd fell silent, their attention fixed on him. Phones were poised, recording every word. The crowd continued to swell, employees from nearby shops watching from doorways. He turned to John and gestured slightly. "You're just doing your job," he said. "I get it. But sometimes, the rules we cling to do more harm than good." John's patience thinned. "I don't know what point you're trying to make," he said sharply. "Let me finish," the man said, raising a hand for quiet. "Please." The crowd murmured in reaction, and John, trying to hold his composure, crossed his arms and motioned for the man to continue. The man took a breath, scanning the crowd. "Imagine this," he said, his voice steady and carrying weight. "You see someone walking down the street in something you disagree with. Maybe a hat, a shirt, or just the way they look. You feel uncomfortable and decide they shouldn't be allowed in your space." He paused. "You tell yourself it's about principles, protecting others from discomfort. But really, it's about fear. Fear of what they represent. Fear of what you don't understand." The crowd absorbed his words, some nodding thoughtfully, others shifting uneasily. A voice from the crowd cut through the silence. "But why the hat? Why here?" A woman in a striped sweater asked, still filming. The man smiled faintly. "Good question. I'll get to that," he said, then turned back to John. "But first," he leaned in slightly. "Tell me, Mr. Manager," he asked, his tone almost challenging. "What do you think people are really afraid of when they see this hat?" John hesitated, caught off guard. "It's not about fear," he said carefully. "It's about keeping this mall neutral. Politics don't belong here." Elon raised an eyebrow. "Neutrality? Huh. Interesting concept," he said, his voice calm but pointed. "But neutrality isn't about staying silent. It's about creating a space where people can coexist, even when it's uncomfortable." The crowd murmured again, some clapping, while others remained uncertain. Phones recorded every word. Nancy, the mall supervisor, approached John. "We're trending on Twitter," she whispered, showing him her phone. Hashtag Elon at the mall was gaining momentum. with thousands of views across multiple streams. This is getting out of hand, John muttered, rubbing his temples. I can't just let this go. Elon, noticing John's frustration, stepped forward again, raising his voice. Let me make one thing clear. I didn't come here to cause trouble. I came here for a reason. And yes, the hat is part of it, but it's not the whole story. The crowd's curiosity grew. Someone shouted, "Why are you here? What's the big deal?" Elon gave a faint smile. I'll tell you, he said, his tone steady. But first, let me ask you something. What would you do if everything you thought you knew about someone changed in an instant? Would you listen? Or would you shut them out because of how they looked or what they wore? The question hung in the air. Some people shifted uncomfortably, while others leaned in. Intrigued, John stayed silent, unsure how to respond, as Elon reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper, holding it up for everyone to see. This, Elon said, unfolding it, is why I'm here. The crowd surged forward, eager to see what was on the paper. John squinted at the words, confused. What is it? Someone asked. Elon's voice softened. It's a letter, he said, from someone who works here. She asked me for help. That's why I came. The crowd buzzed with whispers, as the idea of Elon Musk responding to a personal letter seemed almost unreal. John, still processing, asked, a letter? What does that have to do with all of this? Elon unfolded the paper, his tone measured. This letter is from a young woman named Kaylee, he said. Gasps rippled through the crowd. At the back, a young woman in a green apron froze, her face pale as her name echoed through the air. Oh no, she whispered, trembling. She's 21. Elon continued. She works at the food court and dreams of going to college one day, but her family is drowning in medical bills. She's been working 2 jobs to help keep the lights on, still saving for community college. The mood shifted instantly. Empathy replaced tension, and the crowd softened. Kaylee, overwhelmed, tried to blend into the background, but it was too late. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd as people turned to look at her. John, his arms crossed, asked quietly, but why? Why would she write to you? Elon gave a gentle smile. Because she thought I could help, he said simply. He held up the letter for all to see. She sent this to me. Elon Musk. For a moment, the crowd froze in disbelief. Then chaos erupted. Phones zoomed in, and the whispers grew louder. Even John struggled to process. You're joking, right? John asked, his voice shaky. Elon chuckled softly. I get it. This isn't a normal day at the mall. He turned to the crowd. But this isn't about me. It's about Kaylee. Her letter moved me. She didn't ask for money. She asked for guidance. She wanted advice on balancing her dreams with her family struggles, and she thought I could help. At the back, Kaylee froze. She tried to hide, but it was too late. The crowd was turning to look at her. Kaylee, Elon called out, his voice gentle but firm. You don't have to hide. Come here. Kaylee's legs felt like they might give way beneath her as the crowd's gaze bore down on her. Every step toward Musk felt like it took a lifetime, but soon she was standing before him, the warm smile on his face offering an unexpected comfort. I read your letter, Musk said softly, handing her back the envelope she had sent him. You did the right thing by reaching out, and I'm here to tell you that I'm going to help. Kaylee blinked rapidly, her emotions crashing over her in waves. You really read it? She asked, barely able to believe it, her voice a tremor. I did, Musk affirmed, and I came here to meet you in person, because what you're going through matters, and you matter. She fought back tears, her heart swelling as her words faltered. I didn't think anyone would care, especially not someone like you. Musk's gaze softened, and he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. People like you are the ones who will shape the future, he said with sincerity. You have dreams, and you have what it takes to make them come true. You just need the right opportunity. The crowd fell into an odd silence, some wiping their eyes, others simply watching in quiet amazement at the exchange unfolding before them. Kaylee's voice quivered as she spoke again. I don't even know where to start. I've just been trying to survive. Musk nodded understandingly, his calm demeanor never faltering. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to her with a reassuring smile. Let's start with this, he said. Consider it an investment in your future. Kaylee's hands shook as she opened the envelope, her eyes widening in disbelief when she saw the check inside. It's $50,000, she whispered, her voice breaking under the weight of the unexpected gift. The crowd erupted into applause. the sounds of cheering and clapping filling the air. Phones captured every moment. But Kaylee could hardly focus on anything but the generous gift in her hands. The relief she felt was palpable, and her co-workers quickly surrounded her, congratulating her with hugs and cheers. John hesitated, then stepped forward. "Mr. Musk," he started softly. "I didn't know. I mean, if I had." Musk turned to him, his voice steady but direct. "You didn't know because you didn't ask," he said. "You saw a hat and made a judgment. I understand. Rules are rules. But sometimes, the right reasons call for bending them." John's face flushed with shame. "You're right," he admitted. "I was too focused on enforcing the rules to see the bigger picture. I'm sorry." Musk's expression softened, and after a brief moment, he nodded. "Apology accepted. But remember, people are more than their clothes or opinions. Take a moment, look deeper, and you might be surprised by what you find." His words resonated with the crowd, who exchanged thoughtful glances, shifting from judgment to introspection. Turning back to Kaylee, Musk smiled warmly. "This is just the beginning for you," he encouraged. "Use this moment to fuel your dreams. And when you're in a position to help others, do it. That's how we make things better." Kaylee, wiping away tears, her voice shaking with gratitude, nodded. "I will," she promised. The crowd, once tense, began to disperse, leaving behind a sense of quiet reflection. The story quickly spread across social media. Videos of Musk's unexpected kindness going viral. News outlets framed it as a rare, inspiring moment from a high-profile figure. The focus was on compassion and judgment, sparking widespread discussion. Back at his office, John scrolled through Twitter, feeling the weight of the public's reaction. While many praised Musk and Kaylee, a significant number criticized John for his bias. He sighed, overwhelmed, until one comment stood out. "Sometimes we need a reminder to see the humanity in others. Let's do better." He leaned back, reflecting on the truth of those words. At home, Kaylee sat at her kitchen table, the check from Musk in front of her. Her mother, beaming with pride, held her hand. "You've always been strong," she said. "Now you have a chance to do something amazing. Don't waste it." Kaylee nodded, her resolve firming. "I won't," she said. For the first time in a long while, she felt hope, a hope that marked the start of something new. Elon Musk left the mall quietly, declining interviews and ignoring the crowd outside. With a simple wave, he slipped into his car, his actions already having made a lasting impact. The next morning, Oakwood Plaza issued a public statement, promising to reassess their policies to foster a more inclusive atmosphere. John, who had drafted the apology, vowed to approach his role with greater empathy moving forward. The story continued to spark conversation nationwide, with debates about judgment, free speech, and kindness. Kaylee's story became an inspiration to many, and grassroots efforts emerged, focused on kindness and support for those in need. What had started as a simple incident over a hat became a powerful national conversation about empathy and the consequences of snap judgments. For Kaylee, Musk, and everyone who witnessed that day, it was a reminder that humanity has the power to shine through, even in the most unexpected ways.